my marine community, I chose Morro Bay. Morro Bay is a small city located along the central coastline of California in San Luis Obispo County. On the outside of the city, there is an actual bay called Morro Bay, and that is the community that I will be focusing on for this project. The bay itself is about 4 miles long, and the city truly seems to enjoy the creatures that inhabit it. The community itself looks similar to most bays. It's a big area of water surrounded by land with one entry point that leads to the Pacific Ocean. Morro Bay has a well-known physical characteristic that illustrates the entrance of the bay, and that is Morro Rock, which I'm sure you will see pop up in many of the clips I shared today. Inside the bay, there are so many creatures ranging from fish and crabs to sea lions and sharks. There are a couple of docks in the bay that sea lions rest on, and little kelp forests that the sea otters enjoy. Some physical and biological factors that have the potential to influence my community include changes in temperature, nutrients in the water, tides changing, competition for mates, predators, and much more. There is a ton of life to be found in this small bay. Most can be found under the water, but for this project we'll be focusing on 4 different phyla that love the surface of the ocean and its surroundings just as much as what's underneath. The first I want to start with is sort of a common one over here in California, but nevertheless, the sand dollar. Sand dollars are a part of the echinoderm phylum and live up to around 10 years. Fun fact, they have growth rings similar to trees. Usually they can be found with a nice deep purple color that have hundreds of cilia that give them a hairy look. These help them crawl around and stick to the bottom of the seafloor as well as guide food into their mouth. The ones I'm showing here are just their leftover exoskeletons that drift onto shores once they pass away. Usually I find a bunch more washed up around the bay, but the ones I'm showing here are all I saw on the last few trips I took. These little guys help keep the population of small invertebrates under control and are also a source of food to other creatures that live around here, like crabs, birds, sea stars, and more. Another common species I normally find down in Morro Bay are crabs, specifically striped shore crabs, but I do know that Dungeness can be found here as well. Striped shore crabs are a part of the arthropod phylum and usually hang out in the rocky area on the shoreline near the water. They are omnivorous, usually feeding on dead algae and carcasses. They are very important in keeping communities clean as the forager role that they play. A lot of animals will eat them as a food source as well. For example, in Morro Bay, I've seen sea otters eating some of them as well as birds. In the last couple trips that I have took around here, I've seen probably around 20 a day, but they are good hiders, so there's probably even more. Our next species we'll be looking at is more of a seasonal special down in Morro Bay, Velilla velilla, commonly known as by-the-wind sailors. They are a hydrozoan related to jellyfish in the phylum known as Cnidaria. The name comes from a characteristic they all share, a small sail that helps them get around. These sailors can usually be found here around the springtime, when winds push towards the California coastline, but I don't think I've ever seen this many here before. Velillas are usually more abundant in open water, but go where the wind takes them because they live on the surface. They feed on plankton and have a small amount of known predators, but one includes the nudibranch. Overall, I didn't see much interaction from other creatures and the velilla, probably since not many things want to eat them due to their little stingers on their bottom half, but they were either floating around in the water or dried up along the shoreline. Last but definitely not least, my favorite animal, the sea otter. I could go on for hours about these important keystone species, but I'll try to stick with just the guidelines. Sea otters fall under the phylum of Chordata and have a somewhat sad life history. Back in the day, they were pretty much eradicated due to the hunting for their fur and meat, but now, because of a lot of conservation efforts, they are slowly recovering. They definitely seem to enjoy Morro Bay because I see them every time I visit year-round. Sea otters play a very important role in the ecosystems they inhabit. In Morro Bay, the kelp forests they live in have a bunch of sea urchins. Sea urchins eat kelp, and if there's too many, they can wipe out an entire kelp forest, leaving behind a sea urchin barren. This is bad news because kelp is amazing for our environment in a ton of different ways, but luckily sea otters love snacking on urchins. So, no sea otters equals no kelp, and we really need all the kelp we can get. In Morro Bay, the otters are a key predator, feeding on crabs, urchins, mussels, and more. I usually see around 15 or more every visit, and at the right time of year, even more in the designated sea otter nurseries the city has set up. You can tell just how much the city loved these guys based off the decor, and they even call them their sea-lebrities. As with most marine communities, climate change can play a big role on the health of Morro Bay. Marine life can be sensitive to temperature changes. Algae can take over if it gets too hot, or animals will have to find a new home suitable for them if it gets too cold. Pollution is another big factor. Boats can pollute the bay whether through chemicals or sound pollution. The city's people are another big influence as well. There is light pollution at night and overall tourists trying to get way too close to the animals that live there. There's always natural problems as well, like keeping up a species population or finding enough food to survive their habitat. There's a lot of commercial fishing and crabbing around Morro Bay, leaving less food for the wildlife in the long run. Luckily, Morro Bay has many organizations fighting for its success. There is the Bay Foundation of Morro Bay, Sea Otter Savvy, Morro Bay National Estuary Program, Pacific Wildlife Care, and more. California Department of Fish and Wildlife made Morro Bay a state marine reserve, and the city itself fights daily to protect the area. Aside from all the creatures I've shown you here today, there are a ton more you can find over in Morro Bay. You'll just have to visit and see them for yourselves. Thank you for listening, and hopefully you'll come by soon.